This is In Touch with Terry, a power-packed podcast for the medical aesthetics industry.
I just discovered your podcast, and I feel like I've hit a gold mine.
This is someone who's got a lot of knowledge. She's been there, done that.
Terry Ross is a former Fortune 500 executive, international speaker, founder and co-CEO of Apex Platform, and Terry Ross Consulting.
Just listening to her energy and her passion and just how hardcore she is.
Her knowledge of the industry and just her connections in general are phenomenal.
In Touch with Terry will bring you solutions to increase operational and employee efficiency and practice profitability. Plus, features some of the top industry experts as guests.
The Apex team literally changed the game for us.
Terry, your courses and your podcast are just so helpful.
She made me feel like I could do this.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Now, here's Terry.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of In Touch with Terry. Today, I am super excited to sit down with the brilliant and beautiful Dr. Celeste Nagy. Before I kick it off and learn a little bit about her, I wanted to give you guys a thought-provoking starter before we dive into this episode. And for all of you listeners, my tribe out there, whether you're a practice manager, a surgeon, medical spa owner, a provider, whatever it is, I want you to take a minute and I want you to really seriously ask yourself who your avatar client is. I know we talk about that a lot, and I'm always speaking about that. But really, who do you market to? Who's your demographic? What kind of clients or patients are you attracting, or is your business attracting? And are they the clients that you want? As you know, we teach a lot about KPIs. We teach a lot about there's riches in the niches. And today, I'm super excited to have Dr. Nagy on here. And the episode that we're going to be focusing on is networking your niches. And we're going to get into why I wanted to have her on this podcast and why I think it's really important. And I always love to share personal stories. So for those of you guys that follow me on the Terry Ross Consulting Instagram, I just came back from an amazing trip to Playa del Carmen with my daughter Sloan for a week. We had the most amazing time. So I posed a question to you guys about who's your avatar client? Who do you market to? Is it the right demographic? And I want you to get really granular with that because it's super easy for anybody in aesthetic medicine to say, you know what? Yeah, it's people looking for cosmetic procedures or people that want to look better or feel better. And I get that. Of course, that's what their global efforts are wanting. But you as a business owner, again, a provider, a manager, you have to really think about that you're an entrepreneur and your business has to attract the right kind of people. And you have to be able to stand out. So when I was thinking about going on vacation, as it relates to kind of, again, why we're going to be talking about networking your niches, I was looking up places. I live in California, so I was looking up places on the West Coast, and everybody was like, go to the East Coast, go to the Caribbean. And so, I was Googling things in Playa del Carmen, and I came across Dr. Nagy will probably be able to say it better than me. Xcarat. I can't say it in the Hispanic Latino way. But, it was a 5-star resort with an amazing spa. But it was really calling to me because it had 6 pools. It had 4 different resorts you could go to do like zip lining and swimming with dolphins and sharks and ATV, like so many things to do. And I just have to say that when I was researching where to go, it really sold me on the, beautification of the resort and the pictures and the videos and the copy and all of those things. So I hope that, that story resonates with you because we all choose, right, people and doctors and places and things for a reason. And it's, again, people buy things from an emotional response. So that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today. How do you find your niche audience? And then again, sort of where Dr. Nagy's at in her career and I think what she brings to the table. So, having her on, she is a double board certified facial plastic surgeon specializing in cosmetic and reconstructive surgery. She's originally from Dallas, Texas, where she completed her medical school at Baylor College of Medicine in head and neck surgery, residency at Emory, and then she became the amazing facial plastic surgery. She did a fellowship with Stephen Perkins in Indianapolis. And after completing her training about a year ago, she returned to Atlanta to join Dr. Mark Beatty, and they are Apex clients as well. So, I want to talk about, she has a I'm sure as you guys all do, she has a desire and a passion for facial plastic surgery and, her commitment to not just patient care, but her attention to detail surgically and her enthusiasm for the artistry of blending the elegance between aesthetics and science. And so, Dr. Nagy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Of course, Terry. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, when we met, and what's such an ironic story. Well, Dr. Nagy, I'm going to let you, Celeste, tell, right? You happen to actually know Mitch, our operations director. So why don't you tell our tribe a little bit about like how you know Mitch and how we came to meet?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know Mitch, who works with you, and I met him through his boyfriend, actually. He and I have been friends for over a decade. We studied abroad together, and then Mitch happens and Tyler, his boyfriend, is from California, but Mitch is from Atlanta. So they just would come for the holidays, and I got the opportunity to meet Mitch along the way, even when I was in residency at Emory. And as I started deciding to go into facial plastics and fellowship and knew I was coming back to Atlanta, Mitch and I talked a lot more about the industry, and we're sharing sort of trade secrets and things like that. And when he told me about the Apex platform, I thought it was such a perfect integration to bring into our practice, because I joined Dr. Mark Beatty, who is my senior partner, and he's been in practice for over 20 years in the Atlanta area. And we have two locations, one in the downtown, midtown area of Atlanta and one in the suburbs called Alpharetta. And so it was a big transition, not only for him, but also for the entire staff, with bringing on a second surgeon and keeping the second location running, every day rather than just whenever he was there. So I think that Apex has been really great. We just got started, but as far as trying to get some consistency among our staff, consistency among how we speak to patients about sales techniques, and also sort of thinking about how we can market ourselves within these two different markets, even within the same city. So it's been a great avenue, and it's really nice to have coaches along the way. And so, I've been very excited, and it's been such a natural process knowing Mitch and then getting to know you. And I feel like it's just been such a great asset to have people that already know the system when I'm currently trying to learn it from, like you said, I finished my training about a year ago, but this is a whole new playing field of being in practice, learning to market yourself, building a business, and building a brand.
Well, I love that. And I love so much having people like you on, because I think there are so many people. I did an educational seminar for like the fellows still. And I think we all know, right? There's just such a lack of education. But being a young female surgeon, and you said the entrepreneurship behind this, and then you're right. Now you've joined a practice, and that's going to be one of my questions, so I want to save it. But, for anybody listening to this podcast, and I kind of made a couple of notes, whether you've been in business 20, 30 years, even Dr. Beatty, you're coming out of fellowship, you're deciding, do I go on my own? Do I join somebody else? You're deciding, everybody wants to grow. So the whole point of this podcast is how Dr. Nagy and what she's been able to do. And I think it was an incredible story. Again, I say there's riches in the niches. And so let's just dive right in, guys. And so she can, tell our tribe, our listeners. So, Dr. Nagy, how did you get to where you are now, right? How did you decide, to join Dr. Beatty, right? This 20-year veteran existing practice, which is amazing, versus going on your own?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that, every single person in my position that is coming up to fellowship has to make that divergent point. So there's kind of 3 or 4 different pathways you can choose. You can go into, after facial plastics fellowship, you can go into academics with a university. You can go into like an ENT group, but be the specialty facial plastics person, or you can join someone like I did with a more senior established practice and then build from there, or you can go on your own. I kind of knew early on, I really wanted to focus on facial plastics rather than sort of have an ENT and do plastics on the side. I really wanted to just start building my client base from square one with facial plastics in mind. So I actually had met Dr. Mark Beatty when I was a resident, just in Atlanta. I met him at meetings, things like that. We had developed a mentor-mentee relationship, but also a, kind of personal friendship. And so before I even went to fellowship, he asked me to come back and join him for some of those reasons that I talked about before, having 2 offices. He has 20 years of practice, but over time, he wants to transition that to a younger surgeon whenever he decides to retire, and have that kind of set in stone. So it's a very well-oiled transition versus going on my own. So I had actually interviewed at 2 practices with Dr. Beatty and then one in Austin. And ultimately the one joining Dr. Beatty was a better fit for me. I did briefly entertain going out on my own, but I will be honest with you. I mean, even though I feel a very entrepreneurial spirit and I really believe in branding and I think about marketing and feel that I'm learning so much about it, to really go out on your own and take out that loan on top of all the student loans I've already accrued. And to be honest with you, part of it was never having ever managed a team. I've managed co-residents. I've been a leader in the operating room, but from a business perspective, I have never had employees or even learned who to hire, how to start that process. And for me, it was just a bit of it's a very, kind of terrifying gamble when I had such an amazing offer from Dr. Beatty initially. And essentially, he and I came to an agreement that I would essentially be a salaried employee for 2 years with the plan to buy in at that point. And, I think it's also our personal dynamic that makes it work. I don't think I would have done this with someone that I didn't feel that I, trusted and felt validated by my opinions and things like that. So it's partially that I had a great opportunity and partially that I didn't feel quite ready to take on the business aspect of a small practice. And so I think this is a perfect in between where the plan is for me to take over the business, but I get to learn it in piecemeal while also trying to build up my surgical practice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I love that. And I love that, you're being authentic and just honest with yourself, because sometimes it seems easy maybe on the outside, but you're right. And the loans are big and the overhead is high and the brick and mortar is high. And you're right. The team and the salaries and the compensation and the warranty. I mean, I could go on and on with all what that looks like. And so, I love that. Again, you're just really focused on the cadence of your career and learning. And I think there's a lot of validity to joining, right, a very well-established practice. So with that being said, I'm sure, and you use the word terrifying, again, being young, female. Can I ask what nationality you are?
Yeah. So my dad is Hungarian, my mom is Lebanese, but my Lebanese family all grew up in Mexico. They immigrated to Mexico in the mid kind of 20th century. So though I'm not technically Hispanic, I have a very strong cultural heritage to Mexico. A lot of my family still lives there. I grew up in Texas. I speak Spanish. And I go to Mexico every year. So I feel very connected to that culture and to that community. And then my husband is Brazilian and his dad's El Salvadorian. So, through that, we have a very big kind of Latin American family.
Yeah. Okay. I have to ask though, you said your family's Lebanese though. Well, okay. So my grandma was born in Damascus. I'm Syrian.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So we got that in common. Okay. So so again, as a facial plastic surgeon, before we get into kind of where you're taking your career and who your avatar client is, I'm sure you can do obviously all of the facial procedures up. Is there something that you love to do?
Well, I would say what I initially really, really loved and what got me very interested was rhinoplasty. I think it's so fascinating. It's so individualized. It's so detail-oriented and, millimeters matter and it really changes per person. As I've gone through training and as I've gotten more experience, I really also love aging face surgeries. I think that they can really just change a person's confidence and restore so much vitality and energy to their life. And that has been pretty remarkable as well, just seeing those confidence changes in my patients. But another thing that I'm very passionate about that is not really offered in the Southeast, much less in Atlanta, is doing gender affirmation surgeries for facial gender affirmation surgeries. So that is facial feminization. And I know we're going to get a little more into it, and facial masculinization. And so that's something that I got some specialty training in. And I also feel very passionate about that and kind of bringing that to our area.
I love it. And I think it's such a underdevoted segmentation of population that deserves right care and safety and a place to go where they're going to get good quality care. And it's funny when you and I had this conversation, and when Mitch and I were discussing it, I don't know if you know, but when I was a managing partner at Lasky in Beverly Hills, where that was owned by 3 surgeons and a derm, and where it was located was in like a 300 locations right around a 3-mile radius. And everybody was doing the same thing. And I think we discussed this, is that I had to figure out a way to scale a med spa in such a competitive market. And what, kind of hit home with me, where you want to target, is that we targeted transgender and, ethnic skin. And I think that, as we continue on with this podcast, you guys, my tribe listening, and I'm going to give you guys 5 very specific questions I want you to ask yourself at the end of this podcast. But, how do you stand out, right? We can't all be doing, rhinoplasties and breast dogs and Juvederm and, fill. I mean, it's all the same shit, right? It's all the same stuff. It's like, what is going to make, why is Dr. Nagy different? Like, why should you go to her? Back to the whole credentialing thing. Like, why is she unique? Why are any of you listening unique? And how do you make yourself stand out? So how did you end up, did you always have an affinity towards this? Was there something that prompted you to kind of go get extra training? How did that happen?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So a couple things, I didn't really see any of it in residency. And I first kind of became acquainted with it while I was on the interview trail, and met a couple surgeons who I was interviewing with that did do it, mostly in New York and in California, of course. And I just thought it was so fascinating. And it has a lot of the same principles that I had already learned in head and neck surgery, but really give you that individualized, tailored approach. And they're really complex surgeries, and it's also not, facial feminization is just a broad category of multiple different procedures. So, and we can get a little bit more into it, but essentially I just started to become interested in it. Like, wow, this is so unique. Not a lot of people are offering it. How do I get extra training in it? And when I was in fellowship, though my personal fellowship director didn't do it, there was a surgeon there named Dr. Barry Epley who operated there. And so I would try to be in as many cases with him as I could to learn it, going to conferences, watching videos, reading articles. And then the summer after I finished my fellowship, I traveled to a couple different surgeons around the country just to pick up techniques, learn about how to do a consultation, learn about facial analysis. And so I just felt a really strong passion for it. Like you said, this is a very underrepresented population. And I think that it's really important to offer safe, high quality care. And I feel that I have the skills to do it. So if it's not being offered in Atlanta where I live, which is, a huge, huge population for this, and especially in the Southeast, I think that it's really important for me to be able to bring those skills to this area.
Oh my God, I love it. And I think you're going to be highly successful. And we'll get into other avenues and ways as to how you're going to be able to do that. But so other than the facial feminization, are you planning, just because you have such strong heritage and kind of roots to this Hispanic Latino community, do you plan on making that a specialization niche for you as well?
Yes, absolutely. And I've definitely taken a lot of lengths already to try to do that. So like you alluded to earlier about ethnic skin, as anyone in the aesthetic industry knows, you have to treat every skin type individually. You can't use the same procedures, lasers, peels on all skin types in general. I mean, of course, there's some exceptions. So in Atlanta, there's a large African American community. So I think that's really important for us to bring, and we try to showcase as much diversity on our website as possible with the different patients. In my case, since I speak Spanish, before I even came on, asked our manager to make sure that they hired a bilingual coordinator for me, which they did. And my coordinator is fantastic. She's from Guadalajara, Mexico originally. She speaks fluent Spanish. She has amazing patient care techniques. And so we really started targeting and marketing towards the Hispanic population, both in Atlanta and the surrounding area. So essentially, we did some market research and found the biggest Latin population or Latin distribution of the local magazine there called Mundo Hispanico and Mundo Now. Additionally, Telemundo, who's got an international syndicate, has approached me to do some work as well. So essentially, we do some print ads in their print or in their magazine every month, but I also do a monthly Facebook Live with them. I've brought in Spanish-speaking patients of mine. I explain one different procedure per Facebook Live. And then I've done some community outreach as far as going to events that they've thrown. We've sponsored certain festivals and things like that. And then I've also done some radio hosting in Spanish and done some Spanish-speaking interviews. And I also try to post on my social media. Whenever I make a caption, I do it in English and Spanish and do hashtags in Spanish so that we can try to get those clients in as well. Essentially, trying to target some of these groups in my area, because if you work locally and you build a community within where you are, if you do good work and patients trust you and they feel confident with you and your skills and your staff and feel comfortable, then it will just expand on its own, because they will tell their friends, they will bring people in. And I do have some friends, a large group of Hispanic women that I'm friends with in Nashville. So I've done some work up there and some networking. So it's been a really great opportunity. And I love being able to practice Spanish. I love that they feel comfortable coming to me, and that, it's just built upon itself. And as you know, a lot of them we're going to Miami because that's where they felt that Spanish-speaking practitioners were. And so now that they love that there's someone more available to them with skills that they're looking for to perform these procedures.
So I love what you said. And we kind of combined almost like two questions. We combined sort of your niches, right? Which is the facial feminization, transgender, and then your Hispanic and Latino community. And then you also really got into the tactics that you're doing, because that was going to be something I really wanted to hone in on, because I think it's often a couple things can happen. And I wondered if you ever felt this way, and can anyone resonate with you that, you're a doctor, right? So it's not like you're like a social media queen. Maybe some people are, or you're like, oh shit, right now I have to get good at that. Or, oh my God, how do I go out and market myself to what you said, these communities and this magazine and this radio and these networking of women. And so was that something that came natural for you? Like, where did you kind of know what to do? Or were you like, listen, I'm just a hungry surgeon and I have to figure it out?
That's a great question. So initially I did not really know how to, and I still don't really know how to use social media probably effectively. But I will say that I do think it's a benefit of my generation, because it's free marketing essentially with Instagram and TikTok. And it does put stress on you to make good content and think about that every day and feel the pressure that you need to be sharing your personal life and things like that on social media, which is not always very comfortable for me. With that being said, I think that so many consumers use these platforms for education. And so for me, it's important to put out educational content so that they're getting the right appropriate content. So I do try to be more mindful of that when I am putting content out there. And like I said, I do both my posts in Spanish and in English. I put hashtags in both. I'll even record educational videos in English and in Spanish in order to kind of give that information to a broader audience in both those communities. So it is something that can be very daunting. But with that being said, you do get some returns from it. And like I said, it's something that I've had to learn how to edit videos. It's not something I want to do, but with that but I do want the message to be correct. I do want them to get the right information. I don't necessarily want frivolous things and incorrect information being put on that platform. I want it to be an educational content post for patients to feel comfortable and like they're getting the right content for them.
Well, and I love that you're using the word education, because I think it often gets twisted in the space that we're in, because it's cash medicine and everybody's fighting for similar stuff, that you're selling and you're selling and you're selling and no one's selling any. Well, look, at the end of the day, I just read this quote and I love it. If you're doing somebody a disservice if you're not selling them, right? You're giving them a solution. And so, knowing that these people have again, from your background, saying, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to do something that's not natural for me. I'm going to do something that's going to give people quality content. So they're going to get safety and the results that they're looking for. So are you doing the same efforts in the LGBTQ community as well? And then how has the response been to you? And I hate to kind of bring it back to a return on investment, but are your efforts working?
No, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I am still very early on in my career. So I certainly have gotten some outreach from social media, from our website, things like that. So 2 things that I implemented kind of when I joined this practice is, one, we built out a page for facial feminization and facial masculinization. I also made sure that our website could be translated into Spanish through Google. So those were 2 really important things to me. As far as social media, I am kind of doing it on my own right now. As I ramp up and get busier, I do hope to bring on someone who will do the video editing and all of that for me. But yeah, I mean, yes, certainly people have found me through through both of those mediums and through the website. And, as far as with facial feminization and masculinization, yes, it is geared towards the transgender community, but it also can be geared towards cisgendered individuals as well. There are women who are biological women that identify as women but have very masculine features, such as a prominent brow bone, square-shaped jaw, square chin, maybe a masculine-looking nose, that want a more feminine appearance. And there's a tailored approach that we can take for that. Same thing with cisgendered males. They are biological men that identify as men, but maybe they want a more masculine jawline or a more masculine, hairline or brow bone or things like that. So I can also cater to that as well. A lot of that comes more into customized implants and things of that nature, but it is a broad category that can cater to both fields. And so I wanted to put that content out there, make sure that people are educated on that and understand that these are totally tailored, individualized approaches.
And, I want to go back to kind of when you were looking, right now you're ready to go, get a job somewhere. And when you were interviewing, did you know that these were target markets and demographics and desired treatments and surgeries that you wanted to offer? Did you know that going into taking this position with Dr. Beatty? And then and then is this a way that you make yourself stand out from him?
So one thing, Terry, that I heard from someone is it's really hard to grow in someone else's shadow. And so, I do have to stand out not only from him, but also from the rest of the competitive market of metropolitan Atlanta. And so my biggest things are, from coming from a female perspective and being able to, build that relationship with my patients where insecurities can be very challenging to talk to. And I always strive when I'm in a consultation with a patient to make them feel comfortable, make them feel like they are discussing their insecurities with their best friend, and also give them the educational tools like we talked about to give them a range of options and explain what they can expect from those options, whether it be non-surgical or surgical, and the results that they can expect. So that's one component. The next component is I really wanted to market to the Hispanic community. I feel very passionate about it. I speak Spanish, so there's no reason to not utilize that. And so I did bring that in, saying that I really wanted to ramp up efforts to market to that community. And then the third thing being that I also said, this is not something that I feel that is offered in Atlanta. And if it is, there's hardly anyone doing it. And I can do it. I can do it safely. And so I brought those 3 elements to the practice when I joined and have been ongoing doing marketing efforts with him, with our business coordinator, and with our director to keep that process flowing and to keep making outreach. And other inroads I've made, of course, is other doctor referrals. I think that's really a great way to, of course, start your business. So for me, it's been reaching out to Spanish-speaking clinics as well for the Hispanic community and Spanish-speaking aesthetic med spas, things like that. And then from the facial feminization and masculinization, we work with organizations that for LGBTQ causes. Additionally, I've been trying to meet with oral surgeons who are already doing jaw and orthognathic surgery, hair transplant specialists that might be doing some transgender work, and have sort of started building a referral network with them. So those were other tools that I've been using to continue to build that practice.
Let me just say this, Celeste. This is like girl boss vibes right now I'm giving. I was literally
That's the goal. That's the goal. Yeah.
No, but I was like taking notes because I mean, seriously, tribe listening, there's a lot of things that she rattled off, and I want to kind of connect the dots a little bit. And thank you so much for sharing. I really hope people can kind of step out of their own comfort zone a little bit and kind of dig deep and hard and think about what you love to do. What are you really good at? Where are underserving people or communities? And then what does that messaging look like? Because I'm going to kind of pick it apart if I can from the tactical perspective. And I wrote down, right, what I love that you did, because I think and I, just from working with practices, hundreds and thousands probably at this stage of my life, is that people can have an idea, and then the idea falls short because they don't have the right staff, or we don't have somebody bilingual, or the website isn't representative. And so then it's like one thing turns into a mess. So what I love that you did was you kind of said, hey, okay, here's the things I love to do and I want to specialize myself in. And I think that's great. I think you're going to kick ass. And I think patients are going to be so honored to work with you and have you as a surgeon, number one. But that you took it a step further, and one, you partnered with Dr. Beatty to say, this is how I want to stand out. So I think your communications efforts are great. Two, you said, hey, I need somebody bilingual, right? How are we going to be able to help these patients if it's just you? The staff, right, really has to be adept and understand what these treatments are. And I think if we're talking about back to that education and where practices sink or swim, is when the team is a team, right? Beating to the drum of what the efforts are and the goals are for the surgeon and the owner. And so you mentioned, you had your website changed, you're doing videos, you have bilingual staff, you're working with organizations and communities and all of these referral networks. And I'm sure we could go on and on and on about all these tactics. And I'm sure, I want to make sure people have your information. You're going to get stalked. Now they're going to be like, Dr. Nagy, how do I do that? What advice would you give, right, for any young surgeons like yourself, right, starting out, maybe joining a senior practice, and when they're kind of thinking about themselves, like, why should somebody niche themselves? And what if they can't? What if they can't? Like, then, any advice to share would be great.
Well, I think the first advice I'd give, and this is an ongoing process for me, of course, I'm still learning as I go, but is to do a lot of self-reflection and know what you can tolerate and you can't. I knew that I have to be my own boss someday. I knew that I needed the independence and the flexibility to make decisions. And when I want to implement something, if I come up with a plan, it can get implemented. And I felt like I'd be really limited at that in some sort of academic or ENT group with multiple partners. So I knew I'd have to either be with one partner or by myself. And this ended up being a happy medium. So I would say my first broad advice is to do some self-reflection and know your personality and what it is that you can tolerate and can't tolerate, and then basically weigh the pros and cons of those too. For me, that this was the best scenario. The next thing would be, like you said, I happen to be able to speak another language and really feel passionate about catering to that community and minorities in general. And then also I feel very strongly about, I have a lot of friends in the LGBTQ community and wanted to garner a new set of skills that I could serve that population. But also, like I said, want to make sure it's open to other people who aren't only seeking, that aren't trans, so I want to make sure that it's not, even though it is a niche, that it's not, that people don't feel shut out by that. So making sure that, those two avenues that I really wanted to bring to the practice were implemented, and we've done a lot of things to do it, and I think we still have room to grow. But for those that don't have a niche, I would say just don't get discouraged and just slowly build. It's one step at a time. And my biggest advice is to start locally. And it's going to be like throwing a rock in a pond. The ripples will keep building. And so start locally. Start with doctors that if you know any, start with med spas in your area. You can't, you're just starting. Show up with your cards and a brochure and a box of cookies and say, hey, this is what I'm offering. Do we have 15 minutes to chat? Blah, blah, blah. You have to be very humble at first and understand that this is a small business and treat it as such. Even though, we were never trained this way, like we're trained to use our skills, and I'm a surgeon, and it can be kind of daunting to be doing all these meetings. But at the same time, I'm just trying to envision where I want to be in 5 years, which is a constant flow. And I need to build that now in order to get there. So I would say don't get discouraged. I certainly have waves of doubt in myself, up and down. I think it's natural for everyone to deal with imposter syndrome, but I do feel confident with the training I've got. I feel really confident in my skills. I feel really confident in my patient care. I know that I go above and beyond, and so does my staff. So just really building small and starting in your local networks, reaching out to print magazines, going to any marketing and networking thing that you find is fruitful. And as you meet the right people, referrals will come. And when you see them and you get good patient feedback, it will build.
I love all that. And I really love that you use the word humble. I mean, not to kind of put surgeons in a box, but for any successful person, it's like check our egos at the door. We can't be that person. And, when we think about who you're targeting, it's a vulnerable state of mind. We're insecure. We have to share and talk about things that are problematic, but those are the reasons people will buy from you. And I'm going to use that word right now. They're going to choose you. They're going to choose because I trust you. And because you came from a humble place by getting to know me and what I need. And I think that's where people the lines get very blurred, right? Because if you are trying to just sell a bunch of shit, then that's what it's going to feel like. And then it's this Groupon coupon thing versus I'm not trying to sell you anything, but I'm going to give you the options, but I more care about how you emotionally feel, because if I can help correct that, right, then we have this bond. And that you're just humble enough to say, I'm going to go walk a cold call, if you will, right? I'm going to go meet people and I'm going to go sit at these meetings and go do stuff when maybe you should be in the OR. I get it. But you're right. It's going to be this domino effect. And over time, you're going to be busier than you know it. And I love all of the advice. I hope you guys tried listening. She gave amazing advice and stuff that she's doing. So thank you, Celeste, so much for being on this podcast. And again, you guys, this is for you. This is about standing out, right? Your networking, your niches. There's riches in the niches. You got to segment your who you are out. So I want to leave you with 5 questions that I want you to go back. Seriously, if you're listening to this, like write these down. Who are you, right? Who are you? What are you about? Like Dr. Nagy said, self-reflect for a minute. And I don't care if you've been practicing for 20 years or plus years, like just take a pause. If you want to practice for another 10, what does that look like? Because business today is not going to be the same. It's too competitive. Places are opening up. People are coming out of fellowship. So who are you? What does that mean for you? Who is your target client, right? Who's your avatar client? Why? Why do you want them as clients? What are you doing to create an environment, whether it's online, your presence, your website, to create a safe and comfortable space for them? What language and messaging do you convey on your website or your social media platforms that educates them not just about what you offer, but who you are as a person? How do I get to know you? And then what images and videos and before and afters, are you showcasing so that people can understand, my God, if I pick her, right, I'm going to get the results I'm looking for. So Dr. Nagy, thank you so much for being on this podcast and sharing your knowledge, your story. It's very vulnerable, very personable, and I appreciate that so much. So how can people, if they want to reach out to you personally, do you want people to do that? How can they get a hold of you if they have any questions for you directly?
Yes, absolutely. Like I said, I'm based in Atlanta. You could always email me. My email is drcelestenagy@gmail.com. I have an Instagram account, which is just drcelestenagy, Dr. Celeste Nagy. So you could always DM me. And I think those are probably the two best ways to get in touch with me. And I'm always looking for other colleagues to bounce ideas off of, because I feel like you said earlier, you can have a lot of ideas, but implementing them is another thing. And I just had to come into this year saying, if I'm not in the operating room, I need to be meeting someone who can send me patients. So that's how I feel. And like I said, it's not a place that I think any doctor thinks that they should be, but you also have to keep in mind this is a small business, and the only way to do that is to network. And so that's kind of where I am right now, and it's been a great experience. So it's fun and exciting, but also have to keep ideas fresh and keep it creative.
And I love what you just said too, Celeste. Like this, we are a family. Like this is like Terry's tribe. If you guys, for the tribe that is listening, hopefully you're a part of our Aesthetic Insights group. And if you're not, please join, because Celeste just said it. We're not one person, right? We are a community of people coming together to not just learn from experts, but learn from each other. And there's so much to share. And there's, like you said, there's so much imposter syndrome, or so much, I've tried this and this didn't work, or what about this? And I think we can all learn from each other. And I think that is the most greatest thing that I'm so proud of being in this industry, is that we can educate. I can educate, but we can learn from each other, because I equally learn from you guys every day. So if this podcast resonated, if you're like, God, shit, this is me, we're halfway through 2022. I need to grow, but I don't know how. I know you guys always know I'm talking about KPIs and profitability and revenue per hour and all these things, but there's so much more to that. And I really want, because even though we talked about her niches today, we also talked about a huge component of that is her marketing efforts. And some of that is her personal efforts, getting out of her comfort zone, doing TikToks and editing. Come on now, nobody wants to do that. I don't even know how to do that, right? But building awareness and building a brand. And she's building a brand, and she's building her persona and her reputation and her credentials that we always miss the beat on. We teach a lot about credentialing, right? Why do I come to her versus somebody else? And so her opportunities to do that. And so I know you guys all know this, but if you've not tried any one of these tactics that she kind of rattled off, feel free to reach out to her. You guys always know where to find me. Obviously, all my social platforms that you guys know, the podcast. If this resonated with you, or somebody could benefit from listening to Dr. Nagy's story, please share it, leave a comment, leave a like, and love y'all so much. So grateful to be here. Celeste, thank you so much. And I can't wait to see you again, probably personally. And then I will see you all on the next episode of In Touch with Terry. Ciao.
Thanks for listening to In Touch with Terry. We invite you to schedule a discovery call with our Apex team. The link to apexplatform.com can be found in the show notes. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of In Touch with Terry.